In my previous reviews on this channel thus far, I discussed games that I thought were notable enough to evoke some kind of discussion, with my lore video being an example of me branching out into the more obscure and weird corner of gaming. Both the Hollow Knight and Descenders reviews were made out of my personal connection to and love for these two very different games, and how their excellence warrants discussion in their own unique ways. But this review is going to be different, very different, for the sole reason that the game we'll be reviewing today is extremely alien from anything I've ever played before or since. It's an enigmatic, bizarre, and depraved experience from top to bottom, repulsing the uninitiated due to its own deliberate repugnance. Choices in this game were made to deliberately bewilder the outsiders for which this game wasn't made for. It's art in its purest form in the sense that it wasn't made to be enjoyed by everyone. Its niche appeal is the catalyst for its own excellence. The game I'll be reviewing today is none other than Cruelty Squad. Now you're probably seeing the footage on screen and wondering, has he lost it? Did he just trick me into watching him review a McDonald's funhouse after a clown regurgitated on the walls with these hideous graphics and an overbearing user interface that covers half the screen? And I can say with certainty that acting repulsed by this game's so-called art style is justified, but underneath this game's basic exterior, there's something deeper that kept me coming back for more. Before I deep dive into Cruelty Squad, I wanted to explain my explanation for why this game warrants, no, deserves the type of critique I'll be providing today. Cruelty Squad represents a key contrast between how AAA companies and indie studios develop games. In regards to AAA studios, their one objective most of the time is always clear: to make money. This one fact drives how giant studios make and market their games. Making a game appeal to more people means more money, but this equation also has a subtraction component. Broader appeal can possibly squander artistic merit a game may have. A shining example of a company notorious for broadening the appeal for their games to a fault would have to be Ubisoft. New Far Cry titles are stripped of any interesting political stances or arguments and replaced with half-assed, generic, anti-oppressive regime rhetoric, while being made by a large corporate powerhouse themselves. And other examples, like the Watch Dogs games, are no different, consisting of a rough plot that is trying to say something poignant, but any perceivable form of social commentary was stripped away long ago by bountiful amounts of focus group testing and marketing meetings. For long-winded, overproduced dribble, these games have hilariously little to say or provide in terms of artistic themes and social issues. Now, why was any of that important to my discussion of Cruelty Squad? Well, I thoroughly believe that Cruelty Squad's commentary on our rapidly advancing technological landscape is substantially more powerful and profound than any AAA game ever could be. The game wasn't tested with hundreds of nitpicking focus groups and wasn't developed around the idea of being marketable to the average consumer. It was made as a cautionary tale to give us a view of a depressing, cynical, postmodern world, eloquently displaying how our modern-day actions can have a bleak effect on the future. It's cyberpunk in its purest form. In short, Cruelty Squad is like if a Ubisoft game had the grit and audacity to truly convey its message. With this perspective properly set, we can now begin to frame the brilliance of Cruelty Squad's design. In this video, I'll be critiquing the game's first normal missions in sequential order, giving my thoughts on each strength and weaknesses of each. After the normal missions, I'll be discussing the game's secret stages in depth and how to access them, spoiling most of the intrigue that comes with uncovering them on your own. The game's final level will be shown alongside the game's 3 separate endings and how to obtain them. You have been warned. Without any further delay, let's hop into Cruelty Squad's introduction. The opening starts off with some abomination in a shower. Excellent first impression so far. That abomination just so happens to be the protagonist, a discharged member of the SEC Death Unit, great name by the way, being called by an old business associate conveniently named the Handler. He tells the protagonist to get off his ass and get ready to work for the Cruelty Squad, a company rooted in the security business, who employs agents to basically eradicate anyone who either negatively affects them or just rubs them the wrong way, and it's your job as the master assassin man, not that one, that's a different video, This Master Assassin man to liquidate target higher-ups and cleanse the corporate world of scumbags once and for all. That's the elevator pitch, and if you haven't been completely repulsed by all the things offending your senses right now, then I recommend checking the game out before watching this video. If, however, you are suppressing the urge to vomit, I assure you that your gag reflex gets better during the 10-hour mark or so. Anyway, after the cutscene ends, you are greeted by this behemoth of a main menu. The disgusting pictures, the ominous and foreboding music, this horrifying hellspawn talking in a demonic Animal Crossing voice. It's like Stockholm Syndrome. This game will keep you locked up for so long that by the time you complete a few levels and actually grasp what you're doing, the graphics will actually seem somewhat pleasing. I promise I'm not colorblind, or at least I don't think I am. Is my green the real green? Is red purple? Who cares? Let's quickly go over what these tumors on the left side of the screen actually mean. This icon shows our equipment and implants, our upgrades, if you will. This is what you'll be predominantly spending your money on throughout the game, and they all have some wacky effects that will be discussed as we obtain them. Money is gained through completing missions as well as by other means that we'll be discussing later. This arrow icon will also be discussed later. Trust me, it's important. These assortments of metal pipes are your equipped weapons, which you can have up to 2 equipped at once. Opening up your inventory reveals a large arsenal of firearms that can be collected throughout the game. Guns are only able to be collected by picking them up in levels, whether it be from dead enemies or other more secretive hiding spots, and completing the level with them equipped. I'll be discussing the most important guns to take from each level as we go along. Let's go over your starting arsenal first. The Parasonic D2 Silence Pistol is a good choice for a somewhat stealth-oriented approach, but trust me when I say that sneaking around isn't exactly viable in most levels. The K&H R5 is a serviceable assault rifle stand-in for early game, dealing decent damage at medium range. Both of these choices are serviceable for early game, allowing you to clear most of the opening levels with ease. Both the Snooze Fest Animal Control Pistol and Expandable Baton are kind of joke weapons with their own quirks that make them situationally useful at times. The baton can be used to pull off some speedrunner chicanery, while the Snooze Fest is literally useful once in the entire game, which we'll get to much later. Here are the maps, of which there are only 2 as of now. Currently we're hovering over the first map right now. There isn't only one map, the UI is just a bit wonky. I promise you will get you quickly used to it though. Once a map is hovered and a loadout equipped, you can hit start to begin the first mission. This map is just a basic tutorial for learning how your weapons work, how to pick things up and throw things, kicking, and other important mechanics. One thing you'll immediately notice when playing the game is that the controls are extremely bizarre. Shooting is left click, okay, that's normal, and F the kick isn't that weird, sure. Pressing shift allows you to toggle iron sights on, which seems really out of place. So, if you may ask, if shift aims down the sights, then what the hell does the right mouse button do? It reloads, dummy! Yes, holding down right click and yanking your mouse back reloads the gun. So what's R? Interact. Then what's E? Leaning alongside Q. What's crouch? X. Oh, now you're just taking the piss. These controls are nonsense. And while that may seem true, you really begin to adapt to their strangeness after a few minutes or so, at least in my case. Hell, I've been playing this game for so long that I try yanking my mouse down and holding right click to reload in other FPS games. This game has tainted my mind. Once you jump both the visual and control hurdles, you'll leave the facility and get sent back to the main menu, where you'll find the first real mission of the game. This is the opening mission of the game, and it is a damn good one to start. This game doesn't have immersive sim in its description for nothing. You have a multitude of entry points and methods of traversal at your disposal. Front entrance too loud and bombastic? Climb this ladder and infiltrate through the ventilation system, dropping you into the bathroom and giving you a straightforward path to one of the targets. It's a very dynamic game that reacts accordingly to the large amount of options a player can choose. Methodically sneaking around is a somewhat viable option, albeit it isn't nearly as effective without any of the stealth upgrades. The weapon carried by many guards in this level, the K&H X20, is extremely useful, and has a nifty scope feature that— oh god, my eyes! Your target for this mission, Sigismund and Jerry, I tried my best with that, were caught embezzling company funds and investing in some biological Bitcoin with said funds. Sigismund can be found in his office right here, and Jerry can be found organizing a conference room meeting. Each target can be seen through walls as indicated by this floating red target thing, so you'll always know where to look. As an introductory mission, it's definitely an enjoyable one, even if the future missions give you more options to toy around with, as well as some other oddities. You'll discover rather quickly that the armed enemies deal a great amount of damage while looking at you, and are quick to do so. So be careful while maneuvering about. While we're at it, let's discuss the game's convoluted difficulty system. See this border that's across the screen? It indicates what difficulty you're playing on. There are 3 accessible difficulties, in addition to one secret one, that dictate the strength of the enemies, as well as the other various mechanics. The difficulty you begin the game at is Divine Light, indicated by the silver robotic border. You lose or sever your Divine Light difficulty by dying once in a level, after which you'll be placed into the Flesh Automation difficulty with this border. Enemies do half the damage they would deal in Divine Light with this one. The last difficulty, Power and Misery, is achieved by dying 4 times in a row while on Flesh Automation, giving players the ability to eat corpses to gain health in addition to half damage. Returning to Divine Light can be only done later on, so if you die at any point, you'll be stuck in Flesh Automation until the late game, which is fine. It isn't necessary to progress in any way. Besides the strength of enemies, each of the difficulties have their own doors that can be opened only if the player is on said difficulty. Back to pharmacokinetics, there's a Divine Light door over here. Open it and you'll find $1,000 and a rocket launcher, which is an extremely useful early game boost. The rocket launcher can blow up cracked walls and kill some of the more armored enemies that we'll be seeing. Exit the level and move on to... Paradise really opens up compared to the previous level, taking place in a peaceful, quaint suburban hellscape. Yeah, I thought that was pretty metal. Anyway, this level is the best because it has Cruelty Car, baby! My ears are bleeding as we speak. Of course, we got the staples of all suburban living, like a pizza place, Chunko Pops lining the walls, a basement with an eldritch abomination lurking within. Pretty revolutionary if you ask me. As with most areas in this game, we'll definitely be coming back here during the endgame stuff. Remember that difficulty-related stuff I briefly mentioned in the last level? Well, this game is really tough at times, and I may have severed my Divine Light while screwing around here. That kinda sucks, but it's whatever, it won't be important until later. We'll be able to get it back, don't you worry your little head. These weird, obtuse structures that seemingly have nothing to do with the main mission itself, say it with me now, will be important later. Overall, a fairly solid level. This game so far is definitely weird for sure, but many of you may ask, why has it really impacted me in a meaningful way, like something like Hollow Knight? And that requires the full picture of how the game unravels and tells its story alongside a deeper understanding of this game's hellish levels. The next level being... Okay, so remember how earlier I alluded to the fact that money has a unique mechanic associated with it in this game? Let me explain using this level. In Sin Space Engineering, instead of taking in the wonderful views of this large obelisk-esque pyramid structure, let's focus our attention on these scenic views. More specifically, that island over there. Swim over and talk to this guy who the wiki calls Fish Fred. He lets us take his old fishing rod, replacing one of our weapons with a stick with a string on it. Not much useful in combat, but definitely useful in lining your pockets with that fish cash. So, and there's no easy way to break this news to you, so I'm just going to have to say it right here. This game has a semi-realistic dynamic stock system in which one can not only purchase and sell shares with different companies, some actually appreciating or tanking in value depending on what happens in the story, but also invest in both the fish and organ market. These weird discolored sacks weren't figments of your brain turning into mush. You can actually pick up a wide array of organs from anyone you kill and sell them on a pseudo stock market. I don't know how consumer soft products comes up with these demented ideas that don't seem to mix well at all, yet are completely functional, add a bit of spice to an already gourmet plate of melted Skittles that is this game. But anyway, where were we? Oh right, fish. Cast your line in this little hole here or the ocean here and wait for bites. Because that's the reason I play FPS games. But like for real, the fishing game is really addictive and will take over your life as in a crack addiction. So, the level itself. Right. It's a fairly simple one. I mean, you can drive a forklift without being forklift certified and all, but besides that, it's just your normal assassination affair. Stake some exotic weapons, kill this rich a-hole at the top, and exfiltrate. Not too eventful thus far. Now, before we dive into Androgen Assault, I want to briefly touch on this game's implant system. You have 4 equipment slots pictured here, with upgrades residing in one of the 4 main categories. These upgrades can either be found in the world or purchased with money, and vary wildly in usefulness. They can range from complete waste of money to an absolute necessity, especially during late game levels. Let's discuss the next level. Androgen Assault. This is definitely my top 5 levels of this game. Granted, I definitely have my gripes with it. For one, the inside can feel needlessly stretched out at times, and it introduces a screen-shaking psycho enemy, which isn't super annoying here, but is kind of used to death later on. But so far, this level truly matches the openness and freedom of other immersive sims with the exhilarating and fast-paced gameplay of a retro shooter the best. It's consistently tense throughout, and it introduces this kick-ass revolver most of the enemies use, and it just vaporizes enemies, as well as the flashlight. The enemy design, while definitely overwhelming in some respects, prevents you from mindlessly cruising through and promotes a more methodical playstyle. The targets on this map really stand out. Well, one of them doesn't stand out, but rather bounces out. I don't know, he's a bouncy castle. Did I mention this game is weird? Anyway, it's definitely an excellent level that stands above the previous so far. This is the level with Gorbino's quest in it. It has to be a 10 out of 10, right? This map is pure agony. God, I can't stand this level. You're tasked with killing Governor Bill Gurney. As far as I can remember, this map introduces 3 incredibly bad mechanics all at once onto the player. The first one is these explosion-only doors that require a rocket launcher or grenades in order to open. They aren't at their worst here, but at this point in the game, there's a good chance that you missed the rocket launcher and sealed behind a divine light door, and don't have the grenade implant equipped. That's the main viable path in this level, as going down onto the lower floor slaps you hard with this game's second roadblock, the Necromechs. God, these guys are simply the worst during the early game. They're the first full armored enemies you'll face. And what an introduction, boasting an insane running speed, 2 full armor-piercing auto LMGs, and tanky armor themselves. Better avoid these boys, or hope to God you find either an AMG-4 and break their armor, or an explosive weapon. This level prevented me from beating it last year. It's the reason I quit on my first playthrough. But I figured the route out, and I'm feeling good, and BAM! Flesh rats. These are the actual worst things introduced in the entire game. Forget bullet sponges that spew rounds faster than Eminem spewing bars. How about these tiny, microscopic degenerates that roam the vents ready to flush my biological systems at a moment's notice? What I do to consumer soft products to get him to remove these cursed beings, like, look at this, they're raining from the sky. Anyway, this level is just annoying on your first playthrough, but after you secure either a rocket launcher or an AMG-4, this level is actually too easy. Just shoot the boom boom projectile at the governor dude and then speed off. This level was mind-numbingly simple during the late game and painfully treacherous during the early game. Bad. This is an interesting concept for a level, and one that hopefully won't get me as heated as the last one. Due to a bureaucratic mishap, you're considered a fugitive by your own agency as waves of SWAT enemies swarm your apartment. It's the first level where you truly feel absolutely outnumbered, as the sheer presence of enemy forces is extremely overwhelming on your first playthrough. Your target is none other than your landlord, who seems really indifferent about the whole shootout with the law thing, is more concerned about his party. After killing him and traversing the apartment, you'll find this sniper rifle on a table owned by this emotionally stable gentleman pictured here. It's got great damage and armor-piercing capabilities, so this isn't something that should be skipped on. Navigating through these necromechs, or downright gunning them down, isn't easy, as the sheer number of reinforcements can prove to be overwhelming without a methodical approach. Try to clear a path and attempt to speedily exit through this alley to mostly avoid direct conflict. It's a solid shakeup that adds to the uncomfortable story, as all it takes is one fat-fingered button press to pretty much mark someone for death in Cruelty Squad headquarters. Seaside Shock is a really enjoyable time, all things considered. We find ourselves aboard a demented cruise ship filled with corporate sickos and a setting characterized by pure depravity. Apparently the targets have attempted to make a sovereign island state in the middle of the ocean, but just kinda bought a cruise ship and decided that was good enough. Hell, the only reason we're here in the first place is because the government is offering to pay for our agency's risk management fund. This level is really open, allowing for a decent amount of exploration of the ship's deepest corners and crevices. The level design really shines here, as its verticality and openness really benefits the game's excellent, albeit janky, movement system. The cruise ship atmosphere is a really nice reprieve from the total clown vomit areas of some of the aerial levels. It almost seems that the game deliberately scared off the people whose gag reflexes disallowed them from continuing on in the first levels, then proceeds to treat us with nice... God, this level sucks. Look, I really wasn't a fan of Mall Madness, but I can definitely say that there were some redeeming qualities that made it kind of interesting and almost fun to an extent. The fact that you can pretty much complete it under 30 seconds with reasonable ease in the late game, compared to some of the more interesting secret passages so far. But this level? Besides its relevance in the end game, this level is one big clog. The clogged toilet, that is. Enemy placement is asinine, the target isn't very special at all, and the main poison berry gimmick gets old shockingly quick. I always fall off these wooden boards at least once per level, and it's really annoying. The slimy green color of all the surfaces is just gnarly. I'm not a graphics guy in games, but there are definitely points in this game that truly test that. Could have been interesting, but it just feels like a total bore, through and through. Bog business? More like slog business. more like slog. Stop cutting my mic, it's getting annoying. Anyway, we're at the casino level. If you're interested in playing the endgame, you'll get used to this place. But not for the target itself, but rather the large assortment of exotic fish that swim in these brown, murky waters. You'll just mostly catch these useless $1 coiny fish. But on occasion, if your reaction time is on point, you can catch one of the elusive rare fish, the Wheel of Fortune or the Wheel of Pain, worth a whopping $1 million and $2 million respectively. That's enough to buy a large amount of upgrades or unlocking one of the bonus levels, but again, we'll get to that later. You're going to be sick of me saying that. There are also slot machines that you can spin, which is pretty cool, I guess. Not practically useful, but cool for the sake of atmosphere. Except for the gun slot machine, which can be found in the center here. It can drop a myriad of weapons from the stock pistol to the very rare Sibby 3000, which is a total joke weapon. I spent like 20 minutes trying to get it, and all I got was disappointment. The level overall is fairly basic. Bring an armor-piercing weapon to take care of these golem enemies, like a rocket launcher or the sniper from earlier. Fatbird, the owner of the casino, is in his office, seemingly waiting for the player to shoot him. While shooting him, you may notice that he resembles the psycho enemies from earlier levels, notably from Androgen Assault. After you kill him and begin leaving, you'll begin to hear police sirens outside. Kill the police now that are currently surrounding the premises and exfiltrate from where you came. We're approaching the last of what I consider the normal levels. Not to suggest that the main game's levels are normal by any stretch of the imagination, but trust me when I say it gets weirder and weirder from here. It's that time again! Many of the richest elites across the world meet at the Rottenburg Fortress, attending a party celebrating their fortune. The handler wants you to kill the High Priest right in front of them. And I mean, he's definitely looking out for you on this one. The fortress is home to numerous odd NPCs and a bizarre bounce pad at the bottom that launches you 1,000,000 feet in the air. Jesus! Of the levels one we consider vaguely normal, this is definitely my favorite. I'm not entirely sure why I love this level so much, but I'll try my best to convey my feelings on it right now. Up to this point, you should have had a few upgrades under your belt by now. Right now for this level, I highly recommend the Gunk boosters and eventually, when you can afford it, the Grapendix. The stealth suit is also very useful as it can decrease the range snipers can see you at and make you harder to see overall. And the Grapendix is just an upgrade that you pretty much need in endgame. You're pretty much going to have to buy this at some point. They're probably the best upgrades and can really open up and possibly break most levels, providing the player with a huge burst of movement possibilities. This level is the most fun to speedrun the entire game. Using the techniques described, you can skip most of the vertical traversal normally required for progression. But even without the cheesy skips, this level is still an absolute jam. The sniper placements are challenging but never unfair. The enemies are evenly spaced and sparingly placed, leading to a nice flow of enemy encounters. Kill the High Priest, preferably with a sniper rifle or some other long-range weapon, and leave through the sewer system. Overall, the highest point thus far in terms of gameplay. Another banger level. The office is a lengthy, sprawling, dynamic affair that really tests your abilities up to this point. The amount of options is staggering. Without upgrades, you could go through the designated elevators and kill the targets that way, as well as explore the offices for weapons and other alternative routes, which is very fun in its own right. But if you have the Grapendix, you can live out your lifelong dream of becoming Spider-Man, a really fleshy and disgusting Spider-Man, swinging from target to target, eliminating them with ease. Before you do anything, however, make sure you pick up the Funk Runters, located on top of this gray statue, which are pretty much a direct upgrade to the Funk Boosters, which give you another mid-air jump. Armed with the proper upgrades, this level can be dominated, as its open space allows a talented player to pull off some masterful runs, and an excellent penultimate level that truly prepares you for the end game. Alright, from here on out, the game gets more and more esoteric to understand, resisting interpretation at certain points. The game gets extremely weird at the last proper level, Archon Grid, and keeps ramping up in strangeness from here. You thought the game was perplexing before? Oh, just you wait. Before we discuss the actual level itself, it's important to understand some of our goals as we approach the endgame of Cruelty Squad. As I said earlier, I have severed my divine light earlier in the game during Paradise, disallowing me from accessing certain doors and other more secretive objectives. In the introduction of this level, however, we can restore it by interacting with this shrine over here. We'll get into the specifics of this alongside obtaining the true ending after we cover the first ending first, which simply focuses on us beating this level. Right, so Archon Grid is a complete mess of a level. It is utter chaos. Playing this for the first time feels akin to navigating through Candyland on an acid trip. There are just routes that lead to nowhere, randomly spinning blocks, terrifying life-size Gorbinos. Learning the correct route is an arduous process requiring immense trial and error, or the wiki, whatever saves time, I guess. It takes place in the eerie plane of existence. It's not clear right away whether it's some sort of dreamlike world in which people are interconnected through their mind, or is meant a personification of corporate greed. Whatever the case, it's overwhelming. But perseverance, or glance at a guide previously mentioned, can aid in seeing it through to the end. Encountering the first boss, Abraxas, a lamented flower demon with bloodlust. Bring an LMG and it goes down easily. Just shoot the 3 flower heads and make your way toward the exit. The first ending depicts the protagonist, really seen outside from the introduction so far, walking through a limitless plain, encountering other NPCs on the streets. Dialogue flashes on the screen, exclaiming how we are finally awake from our sleep and among friends, yet lacking in knowledge. It goes on to state that we'll be trapped forever as the sun stares at us with eternal malice. The meaning of these cryptic messages, alongside the game's deep themes, will be explored in depth in the lore analysis section near the end. During the late game of Cruelty Squad, our mission is to beat every level in the entire game before unlocking the final level, in which the true ending is accessible. During this journey, however, there's another ending to find, alongside a wide array of secret bonus worlds that are weirder and weirder than the last. Let's get to the second ending now, shall we? Our first directive on this journey is to obtain the last secret difficulty, which is obtainable in 2 different ways. The first way involves entering Cruelty Squad headquarters and making your way towards this area behind the kiosk outside. Move these barrels and maneuver through the vent in order to reach this sewer area. Utilize a rocket jump or other movement technique in order to make it to this platform. Climb this ladder and enter the attic. Now, you won't see anything at first and will most likely get confused, but if you read some of the NPC dialogue in Archon Grid, you'll remember that one of them talked about a sacred resolution somewhere. A resolution that could allow you to see another dimension. That resolution being 640 by 480 pixels, a resolution so powerful that it completely shrinks the game beyond recognition. Yes, the end game of this game requires you to change your resolution to find a secret. That is pretty awesome. After being told to wake up, you'll see before you a completely new shrine dedicated to the most secretive and final difficulty of the game, Hope Eradicated. There's also another supposedly easier way of doing this involving another item I never found in my playthrough, but come on, this method is way more out there and fascinating. You'll stay in Hope Eradicated until you manually switch to Divine Light, which can be done by either returning to the attic room or Archon Grid and interacting with the shrine there. Hope Eradicated has a few more tough enemies alongside some optional targets as well. I did every secret level while using Power and Misery, so that being said, I pretty much swapped right after I did the second ending. Anyway, now that all hope seems to be lost, you can change your resolution back, by the way. You'll be brought back to the main menu. Now our mission is to acquire Death Mode. To do this, we must enter the first proper level in the game, Pharmacokinetics again. Once here, another door becomes available to us, made more obvious by the life sensor. We are informed by a pure optics worker that he was expecting us, and that if we're ready, we would be given access to the Soul Emulator that's down the hall, which will supposedly change our lives and make the impossible possible. And with one ear-splitting sound, ow, we have become the incarnation of death. Before we can progress any further, we're going to obtain an incredibly vital endgame weapon that allows us to vaporize most enemies in seconds, the Bolt ACR. Trust me when I say that it's borderline necessary to complete certain levels later on, especially the next one coming up. You can find it in the office level by following these weirdly specific steps on screen. Definitely didn't look up a guide for this, nope, not at all. It has infinite ammo and spews this toxic gas cloud that instantly kills nearly all the unarmored enemies in the entire game. Its only downside would definitely be the need for a hearing aid after the tinnitus this thing induces, but it's a worthy trade-off, I'd say. One thing stands in our way at the second ending, the completion of Cruelty Squad headquarters. When returning, you'll notice that this door with an eye on it looks eerily similar to our newly acquired border. Open the Hope Eradicated door and travel down the hallway. It's good to note that being the incarnate of death has its perks. It gives you a couple new abilities and upgrades, like a slightly higher movement speed and the ability to wall jump, which will definitely be important later. But it also has one more effect. It provides immunity to certain poisonous effects, such as the various poison gas clouds, and more importantly, this hallway over here in Cruelty Squad HQ. Without acquiring death mode, we would be quickly killed by these pink particles, unable to progress any further in this level. After traversing through this deadly corridor, picking these damage sponge enemies off quickly, we then encounter the HQ target, very creative name. And to call this guy a damage sponge would be the complete understatement. This guy takes an insane amount of time to kill, so much so that the only feasible and reliable way to kill this guy is to tranquilize him with the trash in every other scenario dart gun and use the Bolt ACR to attrition him to death. Even with this tactic, it takes nearly 30 seconds of continuous shooting until he tuckers out. Instead of leaving right away, however, we're going to traverse these maze-like rooms and demented hallways over here in order to receive the CKZ transactional rifle. It has a capacity to deal insane damage depending on how much the user has invested into the stock market. After catching a wheel of fortune in the casino, it becomes an incredibly powerful weapon capable of one-shot headshots from most enemies. Obtain it, and while you're at it, steal the HQ target's DNA gun on the way out. You'll now be treated to the second ending of Cruelty Squad, the life ending. The text says as follows: I weep. You are a rotten husk. You overflow with boundless power. You have the soul of an emperor, sacrificial hero, blessed by primordial luck. Your friends are in hell, yet you smile. Only good things will come to someone like you. Set goals, have a 10-year plan, invest, wake up early, CEO mindset. Good luck. What could they mean by this? What are the implications? Who's the one actually saying this? Well, we'll deep dive into the hidden messages of the ending during the lore section later on, trust me. But for now, let's utilize our new gear to obtain the game's third and final ending. The third and final ending requires us to beat every single level in the game, alongside a couple secret levels accessed through certain warps in other levels. To enter our first secret level, you're going to need to recall back to the dark basement located in the Paradise mission, alongside the flashlight you unlocked in Androgen Assault. After getting jump scared a few times by these sickly zombie creatures while switching to the flashlight in order to navigate the winding corridors of the basement, you'll eventually, after a lot of searching, find a huge painting that can be jumped through. Really ripping off Super Mario 64, aren't we? You'll then be taken to the Dark World, and surprise, surprise, the level titled Dark World is really goddamn dark. So you'll most likely just die randomly with no clue or indication whatsoever where to go, which is definitely in character for this game. In order to actually play this level like a sensible human being, you'll need either the flashlight, which takes up a valuable weapon slot, or these Virtual Boy-ass night vision goggles. Seeing has never been so painful. Anyway, from here on out, the level becomes way simpler, requiring only one target to be killed up in this mansion over here. After just absolutely evaporating our target into nothingness, we are able to leave through the sewage pipe relatively quickly. So far, so easy. Let's see what the next level has in store. Now we have the second secret level, Alpine Hospitality. To access it, simply walk into this painting at Seaside Shock. Seriously, it's that easy to access. I wouldn't be surprised if you stumbled upon this by accident during your playthrough. And honestly, this level is a blast to complete and might be my favorite level in the entire game. It's so enjoyable to absolutely tear this level apart, scaling the buildings at inhuman speeds and swinging around like an absolute maniac. It's hard to articulate, but the strangeness of the game's mechanics and presentation, mixed with the fast-paced gameplay, really elevates this level into something truly special. It's in the same vein as something like Idiot Party. It's fun, somewhat straightforward to play through, but an absolute trip to master. Traveling through this tunnel in Bog Business leads us to the third secret level, Miner's Miracle, a level I hold with such indifference. It has an interesting setup and starts off interesting enough, especially with this out-of-nowhere camera change to this perspective of the sniper for some reason. We can even shoot ourselves with the sniper rifle. Get Nick Robinson on this or something. This is pretty insane. This level has the player crouching through wooden vents, infiltrating private rooms, and descending into the weird abyss below the mines. It's a decent level, but it's nothing we haven't seen before. The organic, bloody interior of the bottom of the mines is mildly interesting, but it just doesn't wow me too much. Decently fun overall, nothing too special compared to what we've done so far or what we're about to get into. Now this is something else. Access by riding this lengthy elevator in Idiot Party, Neuron Activator is something in the industry that we like to call an absolute travesty made upon all humankind. I mean, there are no words available for me to describe the chaos present within this mission, so I'm not going to even try. I'm just going to let the frame rate do the talking, and you'll see what I mean. Here we go. Yup. Lagfest doesn't even begin to describe it. It's a total mess. I mean, look at all of the green dots. Each one of those being one person. This game is on the verge of collapse. I can feel my PC bending their Cruelty Squad's will. Thank God for the Boise Archies, otherwise this level would be borderline unplayable. Please do yourself a favor and don't spend more time here than you need to unless you really want to feel what true pain is. One more level to go before the game's final hurrah. In order to unlock House, you have to obtain $1 million and buy a house in the upgrade menu. The easiest way to do this would be to fish in the casino for like around 10 to 20 minutes until you find an extremely rare fish. Anyway, on to the level itself, and oh boy, it is a bizarre one, that's for sure. You start off outside on your newly purchased abode, ready to begin a new life, when in reality you've got more killing to do. Open the garage and find the totally epic cruelty car once again. During your Sunday cruise, remember to watch out for pissed off laser worm gods that want nothing more but to see you dead. Driving along this perilous road will eventually lead you to a city in which there are numerous village assassins and grunts out for blood. Dealing with them can be tricky, so try to bring some more long range to deal with them from afar. You have 3 targets to take out, each in 3 separate buildings. Liquidate them, try to stay on top of the buildings as much as possible, and escape back into your bed and relax. But this reprieve can't last forever. Oh no, we have only just begun the torment. Enter Trauma Loop, a level so gargantuan and labyrinthian in scale it puts to shame any of the game's earlier confusing missions. It's basically a gigantic jungle gym of some of the most deadly, conniving, downright dreadful areas programmed into a video game. Enemies as far as the eye can see, monsters line the walls and floors. At the beginning of the level, you are stripped of your powers and able to utilize your equipment upgrades unless you kill a secret NPC later on in the level, but I never did that apparently, so yeah. This level will test all of your abilities and the mastery of your gag reflex you've obtained throughout the game, culminating in a deadly confrontation. The amount of actually viable pathways to traverse through this mission is very low. This one will most likely just get you killed, secret NPCs be damned. I just wanted the ending, and after countless deaths, I found the best route in order to obtain it. It all begins with this inconspicuous bookshelf sitting over here. Press the book sticking out in order to lower this elevator of sorts. Make your way through this weird ruin structure thing and go through this tunnel. Make sure to bring a rocket launcher in order to deal with these indestructible zombie guys. Fall down this bone hole and try your best not to die of fall damage easily prevented by spamming the jump button on the way down. Once acquainted with the unsettling enemies lining the bony floors, locate this weird structure jutting out and climb the ladder down carefully. You don't want to die now. Make sure that all killer flesh rats on the ground are either dead or distracted with something else. Now, you're going to want to run. Or strafe jump, that is. Get on top of this mountain and make your way to its neighbor over here, avoiding the strange creatures chasing you. Eventually, you'll spot an ominous orb in the distance. Touch it, and witness the terror of the third ending. Strobing imagery paired with the abstruse dialogue and perilous music makes this ending one of the freakiest things I've seen all year, and trust me, that's saying a lot. The text is very hard to decipher and plainly read through, but that's going to take us into the last and final section of our video, an analytical look at Cruelty Squad and its story. Here's the part where I discuss the game's lore and what the story actually is going for, but unlike the Hollow Knight review, this game is so incredibly hard to pull apart, especially when the resources for information online are considerably smaller than a more breakout hit, such as Hollow Knight. So, of all the resources I've looked up online, the best source that summarizes the lore of Cruelty Squad is a Reddit post. I'm not even kidding, I wish I was. Linked in the description is a fairly detailed interpretation of the game's 3 endings and what they're attempting to say by a you/girl who can't read. And after reading and analyzing their interpretation of Cruelty Squad and the story it tells, alongside the underlying mechanics and bits of story presented throughout the game, I can truly appreciate how deep and intricate the game's world is, and how intertwined its nihilistic themes truly are. This game can be considered many things, but surface level definitely isn't one of them. Also, I apologize if I screw up any of the lore of the game. This is just what I got out of it. If you have another interpretation of the story, please post in the comments below. I do want to hear everyone's feedback. Let's begin with how the world of Cruelty Squad works. As is evident, the value of life in Cruelty Squad is at an all-time low, due to the fact that the rich people ruling the twisted world are unable to die. Corporations are king and pretty much rule over the entire world, a world bubbling with widespread pessimism due to the rampant consumerism and focus on rapidly advancing technologies. The world's decrepit state can be owed to the people running it, and how they have a relatively infinite supply of money. The Cruelty Squad's members are constantly being respawned over and over again, like the player. Each death costs you or the company the targets you kill money, which is why many of the stocks in the game begin to plummet alongside other factors. Workers from the Cruelty Squad are practically sentenced to an eternity of death and respawning over and over again with no end in sight. This is the canonical reason why targets respawn after starting a mission again, because life is considered meaningless to them and the world has advanced to such a state where death is an inconvenience. Many of the unique non-player characters that you can find, such as the receptionist in Cruelty Squad headquarters, don't respawn when you kill them, even on replaying the level, while the targets of each level do. This emphasizes how wealth can truly equal power and life in this broken world. During the game, our protagonist works for the evil Cruelty Squad Corporation, doing its bidding and liquidating anyone that was in opposition to the Cruelty Squad's motives and or ideals. During Idiot Party, however, there's a shift. The game turns from assassinating targets who wrong the companies into missions in which we attack the ones assigning the missions directly, as we kill the corporate archdemoness and the office level and disable the Archon grid once and for all in, well, Archon grid. But that's only scratching the surface. Let's dig into the first ending. It is postulated that the final boss of Archon grid, Abraxas, was most likely the Trigon of Death, or a representation of death, who's to say, who would later be mentioned in the house level by the 3 targets. This third Trigon gave purpose to the human world by introducing the concept of death, giving basic human life its own value. Within the first boss battle, the player kills some sort of representation of the Trigon of Death, experiencing a world without death in the ending cutscene. This protagonist, while initially blissful over the removal of death, realizes that he now toils in a world rid of consequence, being trapped forever in a pointless existence. For the second ending, the protagonist encounters the Trigon of Life, speaking with him after raiding the Cruelty Squad headquarters. During his talk with Life, the protagonist ascends as some sort of pseudo-godhood, which has some narrative implications we'll get into in a bit. As an immortal being, Life considers the protagonist an empty husk, yet also sees how opposed to this way of life the protagonist is, praising him for going against the greedy corporations ruining the world. Life encourages the protagonist to go on, praising him for his willingness to rebel against toxicity. The third ending has the most to dig into by far, so let's get into this. In the third ending, the protagonist ends the trauma loop, entering the cradle of life and meeting the first Trigon, Malice. who represents a metaphor for the state of the negative value of life and the pessimism spread across the world. The cradle of life most likely perpetuates this cycle of rebirth to occur, and the protagonist seemingly destroys the cradle of life in this ending, killing Malice once and for all. The text can be interpreted in many ways, but here's my best go at it. The first section describes how the protagonist used to have plenty of value before he threw it all away in the pursuit of immortality, abandoning his dreams and winding up as what he is now. However, he is also the only immortal being who is willing to put a stop to all this, willing to end the loop of trauma once and for all. Of all the beings in the world who are lazily depreciating in value, the protagonist is the last one remaining willing to rise up the hill, taking a large step by becoming a god and fixing the corrupt corporate landscape present within the world. The onion is most likely a metaphor for the entire world itself, and how the protagonist is cutting the world into pieces and reforming it into a world in which people are mortal once again, restoring death's rule while also adding value to human life through the establishment of a golden age. A game this earth-shatteringly challenging the societal conventions only comes once in a blue moon. A game that can challenge perceptions of capitalism, rising technology, the pursuit of happiness and eternal life, and death itself, while also being one of the weirdest, most out there first-person shooters I've ever played, mechanically and narratively. This game is so brave. This game, unlike so many games today, has something to say and is not afraid of saying it proudly. So please, consumer soft products, please continue on making these demented ass games, and I will 100% keep playing them. And I recommend that you guys all play it too. Thank you all for watching. This video took a long time to make, but I really hope it was worth it. I'm so happy with the recent views on the channel. The Hollow Knight video has been doing numbers again. Thank you all for your support on that video, alongside the Lore and Gloomwood ones, of course. If you enjoyed, liking and subscribing are free, excellent ways of supporting me and my channel. I have a new video planned pretty soon, so we'll see when that's going to come out. If you guys have any game suggestions, please let me know. I would love to play and analyze some games I don't know much about going into it, so any suggestions will be appreciated. I want to thank you all so much, and also I got community tab recently, so I'll be able to post more updates. I have been, as this video has become closer and closer to releasing, I've been releasing updates somewhat gradually over the past few weeks or so by now. So yeah, I got the community tab, and I'm really excited to be able to share news with you so much more easily. Thank you all for watching to the end, and I will see you all in the next video. Peace.